Today we shall discuss the idea of sustainable development. Now, before we get into the concept of sustainable development, we should know what is development, okay? And we should also know the difference between growth and development. Are you all aware of the meaning of growth and development? How growth and development are different from each other? Can someone explain? Khulana, so can you explain the difference between growth and development? Not audible, Khulana, if you are telling something. I think you are mute. Tell. No, not audible. Khulana is not audible. Maybe your phone. Tell something.
Sir, now it is audible?
Yes, now it is audible, yes.
Sir, growth mean something we can quantify it like GDP growth, income growth, but development mean growth plus societal changes like some standard of living improved, then environmental quality also improved.
Right. Perfect. Yeah, that is true. So growth, usually in economics, whenever we use the word growth, we think that we refer to the growth in the GDP, okay? Or say growth in the per capita income, usually, okay? Mostly because we are referring to the economic growth, and so when we say economic growth, we refer to the GDP and the per capita income and the growth in that. So have you ever thought, why do you need so much of growth in India? No, we are even not happy with 7% as growth. So any idea why do you need to grow so fast? America, is happy to grow at say 1%, 2%, but we are not happy with 7% as growth. China is not happy with 10% growth. So why is it so?
I think we started late in terms of industrialization, basically economic independence. So mic is muted.
Oh, sorry. No, I muted. Tell me again. Yes.
So I was saying that because we started late in terms of the development in terms of our economic processes, and basically we gained independence after a long time, and by that time the countries were already going through industrialization and other processes.
Yeah. In fact, basically, since our population is growing very fast, we need growth. If suppose population doesn't grow, then probably growth would not be that essential. And of course, definitely our per capita income is low, and that's why we also need to grow faster. And how do we get per capita income? This is the total GDP divided by the population. And say in India, the per capita income is around 1,55,000. Okay, and but if you ask many people in this country to give 1,50,000, they will say, what is 1 lakh? We have never seen. Okay, and we have never seen 50,000 also altogether. Okay, because official statistics says that 21% of India's population lives below the poverty line. They might have never seen 1 lakh rupees at a time, or for example, or even 50,000. So forget about that, because even if you see the per capita income of Odisha, for example, it is around 1,05,000 rupees only. So an average Odia earns 1,05,000 on an average. But if you go to Goa, then they would be earning more than 5 lakh rupees per capita. So Goa is the richest state in India. Okay, although it is tiny little state, but then it has the highest per capita income. Okay, and in other indicators also they do much better. But since it is a very small state, we don't consider them as the role model. Okay, and because you cannot compare, their growth process with others. So okay, so growth. Okay, since we need faster growth because our population is growing very fast and our per capita income is quite low, and that's why we need faster growth. But in whenever we say growth, our GDP actually grows. No, also there are certain philosophical aspects. Okay, one is that we think in economics that if your GDP grows, people will all be happy. Okay? Because GDP translates in basically GDP is output, and that automatically translates into the income of the people. And more income means more money with people and more happiness or more well-being. But it might not be true all the time, right? So more money doesn't give you more happiness. That is one concern. And second is that when we are saying this per capita income or the GDP, your GDP might be growing very fast, but then a lot of people might not have benefited at all in this process. Okay, so that means your growth is not helping anyone. And that's why, the neoclassical economists argued that there is a percolation theory or the trickle down theory, and they believe that the people who believe in trickle down theory, they say that in the growth process, in the first phase, the rich people would benefit. Okay, directly, who are involved in the growth process, they will all benefit, and usually the rich people. And then subsequently, the rich people will spend all the money. Okay, and so the money will also flow to the other section of the society. Okay, and that is why you just have to wait. Okay, so phase wise people will benefit. In the first phase, rich people benefit. In the second phase, say the second richest group would benefit, and third, fourth, like that. Different section of the society would benefit. And that's why people thought, okay, let us wait for some time. And but then of late we realize that that really doesn't happen. Okay, so in the growth process, some people only benefit for all the time, and some people don't benefit at all. Okay? And so in fact, some people give different examples that it is just like the wave, okay, or the sea tide. Okay? And when the tide goes up, everyone will go up, and similarly when it goes down, it will also come down. Everyone will go. But that doesn't happen really, right? Some people really basically drown in that process. They never go up. Okay? And that's a growth has been questioned very recently. Not very recently, long ago, people have always questioned this idea of growth, that the GDP growth or the output growth might not really trickle down to all the sections of the society. And when you are using the indicator per capita income, that is also not reflecting the well-being of the people. And in economics, or for that reason, everyone is worried about the human well-being, not the growth. And development, as Khulana said, that growth plus the changes, and that changes could be in different forms. It could be environmental changes, the quality of life changes, okay, because you are getting education, good quality of healthcare, and so on. So that is actually development. And now you would see that in the recent days, most of the economists nowadays use development, okay? Human development, gender development, environmental development, social development. So development is a broader concept than the growth. Growth is a narrow concept. And then comes okay, proper valuation of the resources. See, I'm talking about the steps that are involved in how the idea has changed. That we should, okay, in the growth process, we might be spending some of the resources which are not reasonable. So for example, the non-renewable resources, if you're growing much faster because you are extracting the non-renewable resources, then these resources would be exhausted very soon. So then your growth would not be sustainable. So you should value for the resources that you are all consuming. And then comes the idea of sustainable development, that when you worry about the future generation and or the sustainability of the growth that you are achieving now, then you think about the idea of sustainable development, whether the growth, the momentum that you are now achieving would really sustain in the time to come. So that's how now people are talking about the idea of sustainable development. Similarly, now people who talk about sustainable development, they are also thinking that no, we probably do not need any more growth. Okay, that's it. The degrowth theory has now come up. Okay, that we need to now reduce the way we are now growing, because on this planet we have already generated enough of wealth, and if that wealth can be redistributed among all sections of the society, then we can all fulfill our basic needs. So we don't need growth anymore, because this growth is causing a lot of damage to the environment and the loss of biodiversity. So we need to really slow down. Okay? So that is basically the idea of degrowth. So overall, we say that we are not happy with the present situation of the growth, and that's why we need sustainable development. And so what is this idea of sustainable development, that we are going to discuss in details. And that economy is a very narrow set or subset of the society. Society is larger thing than the economy. Economy, only we deal with the monetary or the output, production, process, all that. We don't quantify even. And economists are so selfish that we always say that we always take an assumption that individual is rational, and when we say rational, we simply mean that you are selfish. Okay, so when economists use the word rational, you should understand that he is saying that okay, the human is selfish. If you bother for your brothers and sisters also, then you are not a rational person. Or if you bother, if you have some altruistic objectives, then you are not a rational person. Because in say utility maximization or the profit maximization, for the consumer or the producer, we all think that you are all trying to maximize your own benefits. You are never worried about the social benefits. Okay. We have already discussed like how the external problem arises. So, but it's not that all the time. Okay, we do that. So society is a larger thing, okay, and the economy is a narrow set. And when you think about the environment, it is even much larger set. Okay. So it goes beyond the human population. Because when you think society, you only think about the humans. You don't think about anybody else. But the life of the humans depend on the other things like environmental resources and the biodiversity or the ecosystem. So that's how. So when you think about the sustainable development, you have to think about economy, the society, and the environment all together. Then only you are thinking about the sustainable development. And that's how this popular Venn chart is used, that the society, economy, and the environment together, when they come together, the part that covers all three is called sustainable development. If you consider any two, then it is not sustainable development. Suppose society and economy, then you are talking about equitable distribution of or equitable growth, that your GDP is growing and every section of the society is benefiting. So it is equitable growth. Similarly, if you are thinking about the society and the environment, then you are thinking that whether the environment can bear the society, the population, human population, whether the environment can really bear this burden or to carry this pressure. And when you are thinking about the economy and the environment, then you think that whether this is environmentally viable, okay, and otherwise, no, it will not be possible altogether. So, but when you include three things, that your growth takes into consideration of the economy, the society and the environment, then only it is called as sustainable development. And so coming to the idea of sustainable development, we can go back to say again, before we could get into the Brundtland Commission, we can go to say Gandhian idea, which is very popular, that Gandhi said that Mother Nature has enough for everyone's need, but for no one's greed. And Gandhi also talks about the trusteeship, and he says that this planet has been given to us not as the owner. We are not owner of this planet. We are the trustees. So we have to hand over this planet to our future generation as it was given to us. So we cannot cause any damage to this planet, okay? Because we are not the owners of this planet. So we are just trustees. Someone has assigned this responsibility that you have to protect this, and you have to give it in at least in the condition it was given to us. You cannot cause any damage to this. In fact, you can go back to also say in Indian context, say even the Vedic period, you can all go back, where, or even you think of, forget about the Vedic period. You think about, look at the tribal people, the way they live. They live very, very frugal life. Okay, so they don't really put any pressure on the planet. Okay, they always think the basic minimum thing that is required for our consumption, and they don't really extract too much. Okay, so so that way, when you are living in the nature or with the nature, okay, and you don't really put too much of pressure, then it is all sustainable. So so minimum consumption is the whole idea behind this sustainable development. Then comes this Brundtland Commission, okay, and because the formalization of this idea of sustainable development happens internationally through the Brundtland Commission, okay, and basically, if I tell you the background story as what happens, that the report comes in 1987, that Brundtland Commission report, which is known as World Commission on Environment and Development. So this report comes in 1987, but before that, I think around somewhere 1982, the UN General Assembly discusses that the growth that we are now achieving is probably not sustainable, and there are probably some problems, okay, and we need to rethink the process of our growth, okay, and so to basically have no clear idea on the future growth process, the UN General Assembly decided that we should form a committee, and that they should work on this, and they should submit a report that how should our future growth look like, okay? Or we can continue business as usual. And that's how this World Commission on Environment and Development was formed. And then I think it was formed probably in 1983. And then the chairperson of this commission was Gro Harlem Brundtland. Okay? Gro Harlem Brundtland, and the Prime Minister of Norway. Norway or Sweden, and I always get confused. Okay, Gro Harlem Brundtland, and let me just confirm. Okay, Gro Harlem Brundtland. So she was the environmental minister earlier in their country, and she was basically an environmental activist. Okay, and so she was made this Norway. Okay, she was the Prime Minister of Norway, and so she was the chairperson, and that's why in her name this is known as Brundtland Commission. And the report they submitted, this is basically Brundtland Commission report. A global agenda for change. This was what the World Commission on Environment and Development was asked to formulate, and so in 83. in December 1983 of the United Nations. They basically gave the terms of reference to this commission to propose long-term environmental strategies for achieving sustainable development by the year 2000 and beyond, to consider the ways and means by which the international community can deal or more effectively with the environmental concerns. And so in 1987, this report was submitted, and the report title is Our Common Future. The report they submitted, that report title is Our Common Future. You all can download that report. It's available for free on Google. You should read that report. I would recommend all of you to read that report. And on in June 1987, during this meeting in Nairobi, the Governing Council of UN adopted the report. Okay, so this report basically defined the term sustainable development. And very often, whenever we use the word sustainable development, people use this definition. And it is development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. So basically, it's not that only we should achieve our growth or we should mind our own growth. We should also think about the future generation. So whatever we are now achieving, the well-being that we are now enjoying, our future generation should enjoy at least that much. If it is more than that, well and good, but at least this much. So it should not compromise the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. And so these are basically the members, the composition. So Gro Harlem Brundtland, Norway. Vice Chairman was Mansour Khalid from Sudan, and so other members from India. You can see Nagendra Singh, okay, who was there. Probably he would be probably the environmental minister that time. And so these are the members who worked on the report from different countries. You see from Italy, from Saudi Arabia, Zimbabwe, Cote d'Ivoire, Federal Republic of Germany, Hungary, China, Colombia, India, Brazil, Japan, Guyana, USA, Algeria, Indonesia, USSR, that time USSR, Yugoslavia, Canada, and so on. Okay. And so these are some of the content I have put of that report, Our Common Future. And so these are the sections you see that in the first one, they talk about the status, threatened future, symptoms and causes, and then towards sustainable development, where they define the concept of sustainable development. Section 3 talks about role of international economy, and then common challenges that we all are facing, such as population and human resources. Then talks about food security. Then it also talks about species and ecosystem, the biodiversity idea. Okay? And then it talks about energy requirements and the way we are doing things with fossil fuel and the alternatives are available also. Then industrial growth, the urban growth, and then the common endeavors that we also take, how to manage the commons, peace, security, development, and environment, and then common actions, basically the proposals for institutional and legal challenges. So that's how the report looks like. So you all can go through the report, Our Common Future. And then some key points that actually you can draw from this report is that some of these, in fact, some controversial, although sometimes, but then these are some key arguments that the report said that poverty is the worst polluter, and because they believe that with economic growth, there will be high demand for cleaner environment. Okay? And so in that sense only they interpret it. But it's not that the poor people who cause pollution. It's not that way you should interpret. It is that when people go for higher income, they would also demand clean environment. But sometimes people question this idea. Okay? It's not all the time. The rich people are causing a lot of pollution also, okay? Because you need a lot of energy, you are using a lot of vehicle, and that's so a lot of pollution generation happens. So, but the report believed in this idea, okay, that poverty is the worst polluter. So you alleviate poverty, and the environmental concerns will be all addressed. Then it talks about two equity concept. One is intrageneration equity, and other is intergeneration equity. Intrageneration equity means in the present generation, okay, we should have equal distribution of the wealth. Remember, equity doesn't talk about equal distribution of wealth. No, it is just that everyone gets basic things. There will be some amount of difference of income and wealth, because you have to also incentivize the people who work harder. But definitely, equity means that everyone is getting some share in the cake. If you are distributing a cake, everyone is getting a share in. So that would be intrageneration equity. Not that someone is excluded from the process. That is not acceptable. Now, if that happens, then it will create law and order problem. See, think about the country Afghanistan. Till today, their economy is so unstable. Similarly, we also see that within India, the most backward regions have left-wing problems. Okay? Because they are taking a violent form to protest. And of course, we also do protest. See, for example, the farmers are still sitting in Haryana Delhi border, okay? And they're still protesting even in this heavy rain, okay? Because they're not happy with the policy. So that means government is trying to achieve some growth in a different way, but then some section of the society is not happy. Okay? So when you talk about intergeneration equity, we should see that everyone in the growth process is participating. You have created an opportunity for everyone. So that then only it is it is ensuring intra-generation equity, and it cannot be equal, definitely. How that is quite not possible, but at least everyone is benefiting. Then intergeneration equity talks about whatever we are enjoying, future generation should also. And again, this example in all the classes, I think we have probably discussed that if our grandfather saw a blue sky and he composed the song Ninelele Ambar par Chand Jab Aaye, we should also see that. Otherwise we'll only watch the song only on YouTube channel, that there was a blue sky and then clean water in the river and very beautiful forest and all that, but we don't have that. There is only a gray sky. So you cannot sing that song anymore if there is no blue sky. See, when I say blue sky, see, it's not as simple as that. No, it has a lot of implications. Think about the pollution, which has basically caused this sky, change the color of the sky. So it's a very complex process. Although it sounds very simple, that the color of the sky has changed, but it has huge implications. So when we say that the color of water has changed from blue to black, it has again serious implications. Okay, now, many times, you see near the city, see when Ganga reaches West Bengal, particularly Havada, where it is reaching the Bay of Bengal, we see that that it is almost a drain, okay? And it is completely it is black. It has lost its color, okay? So it is not blue. So that's why I'll tell you, if we have all enjoyed clean water, clean air, similarly pollution free soil, okay, and very rich biodiversity, the birds, the animals that we see, and we get a lot of happiness, right, by just watching them. Now if you don't leave this for your future generation, then they are all deprived of, they will not get happiness. Okay? So intergeneration equity talks about that. If we are using gold, diamond and all that as the metals, then our future generation should also have a right over all these things. You can't adjust all this. So in economic term, we can say that we think about a non-decreasing well-being across the generation. Non-decreasing well-being. So whatever well-being is a very broad concept. See, Amartya Sen talks about well-being, or even for that reason, when we think about like what do we really want, we want well-being, means good health, good education, and we all should be happy, free from disease, free from exploitation, and free from ignorance, all those things. So that would be really the well-being that we all are looking for. And that is a function of, say, the resources. It could be air, water, the soil, the food that we are eating, everything. And it could be environmental resources, it could be non-environmental resources, the freedom that we are using, free from the exploitation, caste discrimination, religious, disharmony. And so there should be, there is harmony and tolerance for each other, respect for each other, all those things. So that would determine your well-being. And it should be non-decreasing. If it is increasing, well and good, but it should be at least non-decreasing. So those are some of the ideas of the Brundtland Commission. And so when we say well-being and non-decreasing well-being, you basically, your well-being is a function of, in a very simplistic framework, your natural resources and human-made resources. I told the forest, or the sky that you looked at and composed a poem is also part of that. The minerals that you are using, the fossil fuel that you are using for your vehicle, similarly the coal that you are using for producing electricity, and everything that would come under the natural resources. And you are using the atmosphere as the sink, you are just emitting the carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. All those things would come in the natural resources. Then human-made resources would be all the innovations that we have made. I don't know whether these are all good or bad, because it has its own implications, and that are really causing a lot of pollutions or causing sometimes harm to the human well-being also. But sometimes it also adds, for example, the vaccines. Many vaccines have helped us in fighting against different diseases. Similarly, the medicines that we have innovated. Similarly, good technology which helps us in spreading education and health, all those things would be really good. So not that all human-made resources are bad, and we are now creating substitutes for the natural resources also. So all those things would determine our present level of well-being. And then, so some people say that, okay, our well-being is a function of the natural resources and human-made resources, but sometimes this would be substitutable also. Because we sometimes, whenever we talk about the sustainable development, we worry about the natural resources. They would be are degraded, and so our growth will be compromised. But what if they are substitutable to each other? Then your path of growth would also not be serious concern. Some people, okay, so based on this idea that resources could be substitutable, and some people also believe that these are not substitutable. So based on this idea, we divide the whole idea of sustainable development into strong sustainability and weak sustainability. Now, people who believe in strong sustainability, they say that resources are not perfectly substitutes. The human-made resources and natural resources are not perfectly substitutes. So, for example, you may say that you don't worry about gold. We'll all have other metals which can equally give satisfaction. Say, for example, many people are not able to buy gold jewelry. Then you buy some other jewelry which are very cheap. What jewelry that you tell? No, it looks like gold, but not gold. What are those jewelry, Kholana?
Sir, in our area, that is guarantee jewelry.
Okay, and Sasminda, what do you say this?
Sir, we purchase 60 gold, that is imitation type.
Imitation.
That is not gold.
Imitation.
Yes, sir.
Imitation, yes. So the imitations, so it looks like gold. So you don't worry about gold, and it is very cheap. imitations. Okay, and so why to worry about the gold? Some people may think like that. Okay, but some people will say that, you see, if you have more gold not during your marriage, I also need gold. Our grandchildren also need gold. If you use diamond, grandchildren also need diamond. Just I'm giving one example. You can think about iron ore or the steel that you have used, the aluminum that you have used, the coal that you have used, everything, okay, would not be really substitutes. If you have seen the tigers, grandchildren also need tigers. And the tigers in the forest, not in the zoo. No, see, biologists would say that no, we'll not do hybrid, tigers. Okay, we'll do cross breeding or breeding, and in our laboratory we'll produce tigers, just like we are doing now poultry farming. Okay, so don't worry about chicken. We will grow their population. Okay, we have science. Okay, so people are not happy with that. They want all natural things, and but some other people say that no. So okay, people believe that okay, these are not substitutes. Some people say that no, these are all substitutes. Everything except parents, all are everything is substitute. So don't be too much of emotional. Okay, and everything can be substitutable because we are getting all synthetic things, and we have gone to the extent of getting synthetic milk. Okay, because the demand for milk has gone up so high that we don't get the natural milk, and we are getting synthetic milk, synthetic diamond. Everything is synthetic nowadays. Okay, so it is just like imitation. For everything there is substitute, and just like that we can have, and that way our human capital is very much helpful. And so if you have the science and technology or the knowledge, then you can create a substitute. So you should all invest a lot of money. So for example, if you are using the non-renewable resources, then you can use the money for creating technology which can replace the old okay, or the existable resources, and that's how our oil being remains constant. Okay, and the overall resource remains constant. So to put that in a graphical form, strong sustainability idea says that okay, over time period, the resource base should remain constant. Natural resource should not deplete at all. So this box, a green color box, is the total resource that we have, and we say that the box includes half of the natural resources and half of the human resources, and this should not change at all. The proportion should remain constant, and this should not deplete at all. If it increases, well and good, but it should not deplete. But in case of weak sustainability, the idea changes. It says, over time, natural resources may deplete. Okay, but if you are investing in knowledge, in human capital, then it is just replacing. And so overall, your research stock is constant, right? That box size is same. Okay, and only the composition has changed. In the previous graph, the share was fixed, but here the share is changing. Initially, you see the natural resource component higher, and gradually you see that the human-made resources size is increasing, natural resource component is falling, but overall resource base is constant. So this weak sustainability basically believes in the substitution idea, that resources are substitutable, and they're perfectly substitutable. So you don't have to really do much. And so then, how do we solve the problem? Then what kind of growth we need to achieve? There are in fact many formulas. I'm not getting to that, but then Harman Dali actually gives some operational principle that how can we achieve then sustainable development? Whether if you believe in strong sustainability idea, then you cannot touch the non-renewable resources. And if you believe in weak sustainability idea, then you will be going on finishing all the existable resources. Then existable resources will not be available for the future generation. So then Harman Dali is giving some operational principles, and he says that the first thing that we have to do to achieve sustainable development is to control the population. That is first thing. We are too many on this planet. Okay, and we are going to reach somehow now 8 billion, right? And the report that I have asked you to read, that is Partha Dasgupta's report, and there they have made a reference that our population will stabilize, between somewhere maximum 12 billion. Okay, that would be the stabilizing point. Like say in India, we are making a guess that our population will stabilize somewhere around say 2 billion. Okay, now we are already 1.45. Okay, and it may increase further, and so up to maybe by 2045, our population will be stabilized around say 2 billion or a little more, and the world population will stabilize somewhere around 12 billion. Okay. And so we need to control population because we are too many on this planet, and then we have to look at the rate of the use of the renewable sources, such as fish, forest, and all that. These are renewable resources. And in case of renewable resources, our rate of use of the renewable sources should be less than the rate of the regeneration. If fish population is growing at 10%, our growth rate should be less than that. To give an example, suppose the fish stock is say 100 kg. The world fish stock is say 100 kg, or you can translate it into say 100 billion tons or something like that. Now, depending on your stock, there will be growth rates. If the stock is higher, your growth rate will be higher. Just like your income. If you have made a fixed deposit which grows at 10%, if you have 100 rupees, it will become 110 rupees next year. But if you have 1 lakh rupees, it becomes 1,10,000 rupees next year. Similarly, if you have 1 crore, then it becomes a higher amount. So like that. If your stock is higher, your growth rate will be higher. So if you have a higher stock, and if you have a growth rate, to look at that growth rate, just like the income growth we saw, that if it was 100 and next year it is becoming 110, you can eat only 10 kg extra, so that your constant your base remains constant, and you look at the growth rate. Similarly, if you have a higher stock, then suppose you have 1 crore of rupees fixed deposit, then your income would grow at 10%, but then the growth is already 1 lakh. So you can eat 1 lakh fishes if you convert that into fishes. So you have to mind this, okay? The rate of regeneration of your renewable sources. But if it is non-renewable resources such as minerals, then the formula would be different. And there, Harman Daly says, you should use this resource if only you can create a perfect substitute for this. Now, of course, this is also a problematic thing because our knowledge is very much limited. See, for example, we are using iron ore for a specific purpose. Now, for that purpose, we created a substitute. But we do not know for what all other purposes the iron ore can be used, right? Isn't it? Iron ore is being used for a specific purpose now. And that's why we believe that, okay, iron ore will be over. So we are creating substitute for, say, objective 1. But iron ore can be used for objective, say, 10 objectives. Now, when we are creating the substitutes, we have created substitute only for objective 1. But it can be used for 9 other objectives. And we don't have a substitute for that. So, but whatever. Now, Harman Daly is saying that that existable resources should be used only if you can create a substitute. Now, how many substitutes you should create, you don't know. In fact, that is why in case of biodiversity particularly, why we are too much worried about the biodiversity loss, because we do not know that even if the biodiversity is not helping us directly, we do not know indirectly how it might be helping us. In future, we may know the value of it. So, for example, for a long time, we did not worry much about the water, groundwater or surface water. we thought the water is abundant. But now we are very much worried that no, water can be really a problem. Groundwater is depleting, surface water is getting polluted, and many cities are now drying. You look at situation in Chennai, what is happening, and look at Hyderabad also. And and many universities are shutting down their campuses in summer season because of lack of water. And the people in Delhi are already buying. So since I lived in Delhi for 1.5 years, I used to buy drink water, that separate bottle, 20 liters of, but no, but so that situation is not happening. You can manage with your water purifier in other parts of the country, but that situation may not exist in future. So this is a very problematic thing, but at least Harman Dali has said this. And then Harman Dali also said that, okay, if you are using non-renewable sources, then the profit that you are making should be used for human capital. Because through science and technology and innovation, you can get substitutes. In fact, that is international also accepted that, okay, you want to create substitutes, and that, so if the profits are invested in science and technology and building up human capital, then you can get a substitute in future. And then the last one is that rate of pollution emission should be less than the assimilation capacity. The nature can process some amount of waste, okay, but it cannot assimilate whatever you would produce. And nature says very simple formula. Nature says, see, I can process whatever I have produced, but I cannot process what you have produced, right? Like the humans, whatever, all organic things, nature can easily process. You just throw it. All biodegradable, the vegetable that you eat, even the humans, who are creation of the nature, they all die. Nature can process within a week. You will be all decomposed, okay? And you'll be part of the soil again, part of Panchabhuta. Okay? So you'll be going. Some part would be going to soil, some part would be water, fire, all that. So 5 Panchabhutas, of which our human body is made of. So nature can easily process all those things. But nature has not produced plastic. Nature has not produced the oil that we are using. It was there within the soil. So why did you extract it? So nature says, no, I cannot do anything. If you are producing something, you have to process it. But unfortunately, humans are not realizing that. Humans are saying that, no, we will produce. And nature has the responsibility to degrade everything. Nature cannot do that. Okay? So we have to keep control of the pollution emission, be it water, air, or any kind of pollution. We have to look at the capacity. So that's why here also you can see that the pollution need not be zero. Some amount of pollution is all fine. Even see, there is always pollution. Some amount of pollution is always there, but nature could really process that because it was in a very limited quantity, okay? And that's how it could process. But now we are overburdened, creating huge amount of waste. So nature is not able to process this. Okay, so these are Harman Dali's principle that we have to keep pollution under control. Then we have to reduce the rate of using renewable sources. You have to use the existing resources only if you have a substitute. We have to use the profits that we get from existing resources in creating substitutes, and we have to reduce the pollution to the level of assimilation capacity of the nature. Then we can achieve the sustainable development. There are many other formulas given by different other people, but more or less, these ideas, capture almost everything. So now coming to the implementation level, now we see that we have talked about the Millennium Development Goals, where we had 8 goals, and the target was up to 2015. And of course, many countries could not achieve those targets. Okay? Basically, how to achieve? What we have done is we are coming from the Brundtland Commission report to now MDG. The time period is also gone, 2015. Then we have now set up more targets, SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. Now we have 17 goals, and the time period is 2030. The targets for the SDG is 2030. Can we really achieve all these things? Okay. Very difficult. In fact, if people, the agent, the institutions that are tracking all these things, we say that no, probably will fail, will miss the target. Some indicators, yes, you can achieve, but not all. Simple things also you cannot achieve. No poverty, zero hunger, no good health, good quality education. Even simple indicators you can't achieve. Forget about other things. Okay. So, but still, at least we are trying for that. Okay. And but then we should also think that no, whether it is MDG or SDG, we are only obsessed for the humans. Okay. We never thought that no other living entities are also important on this planet. That's why by this Dasgupta review report says that basically that no, it's not. We always thought that it is all human centric, okay? And other living beings are not important for us. But Dasgupta review report simply says that no, it is the other living beings. No, they determine the quality of human life. If they are rich, our quality of life will be rich. If they are less in number and their diversity is less, we are going to suffer. Okay. So our quality of life depends on the life of others. We should realize that. We should not kill others. So our human-centric growth should also change. Okay. And that's why you can see other, although these are not accepted universally, but then there are also other agencies who have argued, like such as Earth Charter 2018, which talks about the slogan is embrace a sustainable lifestyle. And the Earth Charter says the respect and care for the community of life, ecological integrity, social and economic justice, democracy, non-violence, peace. So we are adding certain other things, the value things, okay, and the ecological integrity, respect, care. Usually we think that, no, in fact, I remember when we used to study economic growth and we used to study something, the barriers of economic growth. And we used to say that the culture is a barrier to the growth. It's not all the time. Culture is not a barrier all the time. In fact, it is part of sustainable development. If you can't respect others' culture, then the society will not be sustainable. And the diversity of culture and diversity of the living beings, you all have to respect. So the Earth Charter talks about that. Similarly, now if you, after taking into consideration this Earth Charter, and now if you have to define the sustainable development, now it should include the ecological, cultural, spiritual, social, political, ethical, aesthetic, scientific, technical, economic, and so many other dimensions. Okay, so sustainable development is not a very narrow idea. In fact, it is a very difficult thing also to understand. Okay, that how many aspects should be included. Okay, that so our growth should be sensitive to all these things. It should not put pressure too much on the ecosystem. It should not damage the cultural issues, because see, we all derive a lot of happiness from the culture, right? And if you destroy the culture, and then your happiness is also eroded. Spirituality, be it religion or spirituality, of course, is not religion. Spirituality goes beyond that. Actually, some of the fundamental values for the humans are basically the spiritual things. Yeah, it doesn't talk about anything like whether you have to offer milk to Lord Shiva or somebody. No, it's not spiritual. No, spiritualism would say that no, you should respect each other. You should be non-violent. Okay, and so those would be like, you should speak truth. Those would be the spiritual things. You should help each other. All those things would be the spiritual values. And then the social values, then the political stability, then the ethical issues, which would be somewhat against spiritual, and aesthetics values, that song I was telling. Similar, the scientific things, which helps us in improving our quality of life, the technological solution, the economic issues. The economy now has gone to the end. We are all so much of obsessed for economy. Now in the sustainable development process, now economic things should not get all the priority. Rather, you should think about other things equally. And so that's a sustainable development is a very broad idea. Okay? And if you have to sustain the present, standard of living or well-being, really you have to think about the endogenous inequity, and you have to go beyond the narrow economic things. Think about many other things. Okay, so, but are we on the track? Okay, probably the answer is no. No, answer is no. We only give a lot of bhashan. Our action is very, very limited, and we only are now confined to our words, agreements, international agreements, treaties, making laws. We are only there. Okay, like we have announced SDG. Okay, of course, we are working for that, but then not actually very seriously. Look at the developing countries and see, look at this COVID-19 situation. How the humanity has now suffered. We have seen that how human values are so unimportant. In fact, when I recall some of the images during the horror images of COVID-19 lockdown, the first phase of lockdown, you would be really shattered. Do you remember the image of the baby? Okay, on a railway track, the mother was sleeping and the mother has died, and the baby was trying to suck the breast of the mother to get some milk. The mother was died, okay, and mother was dead. The baby didn't know. When I imagine that photo, okay, it's so horrific. Hundreds of migrant workers died. Okay, many workers who were sleeping on the railway track, and the train just run over them, and how those people are killed. Many people walked, on the roads hundreds of kilometers, thousands of kilometers to reach their home. So, and look at the health crisis that we are still facing, and the divide also in the society, the rich versus the poor. Now, who brought this disease and who is now affected? So, if you think about all these things, then you would be quite disturbed. Okay? And so, if we ask this question whether we are on the track of sustainable development, so the narrow idea of economic things, the growth, the more income idea would be completely lost. Now your quality of life depends on so many other things. Okay? And if you don't have those ethical values or other things, then you can't really achieve sustainable. And the meaning of development is simply questionable. Okay, so that's all. Okay, we'll stop here, and I would suggest all of you to read the report of Brundtland Commission report, Our Common Future. At least know a few pages, as much as you can read. You must read, and that this would change your whole idea. And since we are all social science students, we should know also, like, are we on the track? Okay? And so just like your Dasgupta review report, by the time you finish reading this report, you would probably a little more sensible person. So similarly, this course should not only be studied for getting grades, okay, rather or for getting your PhD degree. At least some of the reflections, if you can make in our life, some changes you can make in our life, then the world would be a better world. Okay? Otherwise, the purpose of having this environmental economics course is defeated. If you just get the 6 credits, this course is of 6 credits. So you should not think like that the course is only for 6 credits that you are studying. No, it is much beyond that. At least some reflections should be there in our life after studying the report or this course. Okay, so with this we stop here, and if there are any questions, we can take in the next class. Yeah, okay, Khulana, you are telling something. Yeah, tell. Yes.
Sir, you have talked about the substitute. It is
Yes.
perfect substitute or close substitute?
No, even close substitute also. See, the people talk about definitely perfect substitute. Because close substitute means again you are compromising your growth, right? So
Perfect substitute means same product.
perfect substitutes are not available. Yes, you are telling that,
Yes,
right?
sir.
These are
Yes,
not
sir.
available. So perfect substitutes are definitely not available, and that is why we have to worry. Okay, so some people say that we have to preserve the resources, okay, because we do not know. In fact, that's why the Dasgupta review report, you'll really understand, the whole idea that since these are not perfectly substitute and our understanding is so limited about the ecosystem, we need to preserve all of them. Okay, in future, they may come, help of somebody. So, for example, we never valued the service of the butterfly. We never valued the service of the honeybees. Okay, but they do pollination, and without pollination, imagine the food production that how it will be affected. Okay, so similarly, the service of the earthworms, okay, we never valued. But now we understand that earthworm is doing such a great job, and by putting urea, we have killed them. And since earthworms are not existing in the soil, we have to use more and more urea or the NPK. Okay, so yeah, definitely substitution not available. That is why there is a controversy that strong sustainability and weak sustainability. Even if you are talking about imperfect substitutes, our quality of life is again compromised. Okay, so let me stop here, and in next class we'll discuss some of the issues. Okay. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.